Sir, hold up. You a delivery guy? This entrance isn't for drop-offs.
I'm not delivering anything. I've got a meeting on the 12th floor.
Meeting with who? Maintenance?
No, with the executive board.
The board? Nah, man, wrong entrance. You don't belong up there.
Really? Why is that?
I just think so.
No, you assume so.
And
that's exactly the problem I'm here today to.
Officer Keith Brennan had been working corporate security in San Francisco's financial district for 12 years. The last 8 of those stationed at the headquarters of Horizon Capital Management, one of the largest investment firms on the West Coast. He'd racked up 9 formal complaints in those 8 years. 9 separate incidents where Black professionals, Latino executives, and Asian entrepreneurs were stopped, questioned, and redirected away from executive floors because Brennan decided they didn't look like they belonged. Every complaint had been dismissed as a misunderstanding. The building management called him vigilant. His supervisor called him thorough. No one called him what he actually was, racist. On a Tuesday morning in downtown San Francisco, everything about Keith Brennan's protected position came to an end. Dr. Andre Sinclair had just arrived at 555 California Street for a meeting that would reshape the future of Horizon Capital Management. He was the newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer for the firm, hired after a discrimination lawsuit and federal investigation forced the company to confront its toxic culture. Dr. Sinclair had a PhD in organizational psychology from Stanford, 20 years of experience consulting with Fortune 500 companies, published research on systemic bias in corporate hiring. He'd been featured in Harvard Business Review, he testified before Congress. That morning, he was a black man in jeans and a blazer carrying a leather messenger bag. And to Officer Keith Brennan, that only meant one thing: delivery person, service worker, someone who didn't belong in the executive suites. That false assumption triggered an escalation that would end in Brennan's termination, a viral video with 40 million views and a $3 million wrongful detention settlement. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Downtown San Francisco, the financial district, where glass towers climb into fog and billions of dollars move through servers and handshakes. 555 California Street stood 52 stories tall, home to banks, law firms, investment companies, and consulting groups. The building had 3 entrances: the main lobby for employees and visitors, the service entrance for deliveries and maintenance, the executive entrance for C-suite personnel and board members. Dr. Andre Sinclair walked toward the executive entrance at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The sun was breaking through the fog. The streets were filling with professionals in suits and tech workers in hoodies. The executive entrance had marble floors, brass fixtures, and a security desk staffed by officers who controlled access to the upper floors. Dr. Sinclair was 46 years old. He'd built his career studying how unconscious bias shapes organizational behavior, how assumptions about competence track along racial lines, how gatekeeping happens not through written policy but through snap judgments made by people who've never examined their own prejudices. He'd written 3 books on the subject. He'd consulted with 63 companies. He'd helped design diversity training programs used by hundreds of corporations. That morning, he was about to become a case study in the very bias he'd spent his career fighting. He'd been hired by Horizon Capital Management 6 weeks earlier after the company settled a major discrimination lawsuit. 3 black employees had sued, alleging systematic exclusion from promotion opportunities, hostile work environment, and retaliation for complaints. The case had been settled for $7.2 million. The terms included hiring an independent chief diversity officer with full authority to investigate, recommend policy changes, and report directly to the board. Dr. Sinclair had been that hire. His first major presentation to the executive board was scheduled for 9 a.m. He'd prepared extensively: data on hiring patterns, analysis of promotion rates by demographic, survey results from anonymous employee interviews, recommendations for structural changes. He had his laptop, his presentation materials, his board credentials. He was 15 minutes early, exactly as he preferred. He approached the executive entrance wearing dark jeans, a gray blazer over a white button-down shirt, brown leather shoes, and carrying a leather messenger bag. Professional, but not corporate, the way he always dressed. He'd never believed in performing respectability just to make others comfortable. Officer Keith Brennan was stationed at the security desk just inside the executive entrance. He saw Dr. Sinclair approaching through the glass doors, and his brain immediately made calculations. Black man, casual clothing, messenger bag, not a suit, not the right look, probably delivery, definitely not executive level. Brennan stepped forward and opened the door slightly, blocking the entrance. "Sir, hold up, you a delivery guy? This entrance isn't for drop-offs." Dr. Sinclair stopped, He'd encountered this before, not often in recent years, but enough to recognize the pattern immediately. The assumption, the redirection, the casual gatekeeping that happened when someone decided you didn't fit the space you were entering. I'm not delivering anything. I've got a meeting on the 12th floor. Brennan's eyes flicked to the messenger bag, then back to Dr. Sinclair's face. Meeting with who? Maintenance? There it was. The assumption that a black man going to the 12th floor, where Horizon's executive offices were located, must be going to maintenance, not to the boardroom, not to meet with executives, definitely not to present to the people who ran a $20 billion investment firm. Dr. Sinclair kept his voice level. No. With the executive board, Brennan laughed. Not a full laugh, but a dismissive sound that conveyed complete disbelief. The board? Nah, man. Wrong entrance. You don't belong up there. Dr. Sinclair felt the familiar surge of frustration mixed with clinical fascination. This was exactly what he studied. The confidence with which people made assumptions. The certainty they felt when deciding who belonged where. The complete lack of self-awareness about their own bias. Really? Why is that? Brennan shifted his weight, suddenly less certain. His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't have a reason. He had a feeling, an assumption, a gut reaction that this man in jeans carrying a messenger bag couldn't possibly be going to the executive floor. I just think so? The uncertainty in his voice was telling. He knew he didn't have a legitimate reason. He just felt it. And in his world, that had always been enough. Doctor? Sinclair's voice dropped into something colder, more precise. No, you assumed so. And that's exactly the problem I'm here today to address. Do you think security officers should be required to state a specific policy violation before blocking someone's entrance? Drop your answer below. Brennan's face hardened. He'd been challenged and his pride kicked in. Look, I don't know who you think you are, but I need to see some ID and verify your appointment before you go anywhere. Dr. Sinclair reached into his messenger bag slowly, deliberately. I'm reaching for my identification now. My name is Dr. Andre Sinclair. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for Horizon Capital Management. I was hired 6 weeks ago. I have a 9 a.m. presentation to the executive board on the systemic discrimination issues this company is facing, and you just provided me with a perfect real-time example. He pulled out his wallet and extracted his Horizon Capital employee badge. The card had his photo, his name, his title, and an access code that granted him entry to every floor in the building, including executive areas. He held it up. Brennan looked at it, actually looked at it. His expression shifted slightly as reality started to penetrate his assumptions. That could be a visitor badge. I need to verify with someone upstairs. Dr. Sinclair's patience was wearing thin. That is an employee badge, not a visitor pass. Employee. It has my photo, my name, and my access credentials. You can scan it right there at your desk. It will show you I have executive level clearance. I still need to call up and verify. Then call, but understand that you stopped me because you assumed a black man in jeans couldn't possibly be going to an executive board meeting. You didn't ask for ID first. You didn't check your system. You led with delivery guy and maintenance. That's not security protocol. That's racial profiling. Brennan's face flushed. I was just doing my job. Your job is to verify credentials, not to make assumptions based on appearance. If you'd asked for my ID first, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you didn't. You decided I didn't belong before you knew anything about me. A small crowd had started to gather, other employees entering through the executive entrance. A woman in a suit, 2 men with briefcases. They slowed down, watching the confrontation. Someone pulled out their phone, started recording. Brennan noticed the audience. His voice dropped. Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while I verify your credentials. I'm not stepping aside. Scan my badge, call upstairs, do whatever you need to do. But I'm not moving until you verify what I've already told you. Brennan walked back to his security desk, Dr. Sinclair's badge in hand. He scanned it. The computer beeped. Green light. Access granted. Executive level. Dr. Andre Sinclair. Chief Diversity Officer. Hired 6 weeks ago. Active employee. The screen showed everything Dr. Sinclair had said was true. Brennan stared at the screen, the reality sinking in. He'd stopped a C-suite executive. He'd assumed he was a delivery person. He'd questioned his right to be there. And he'd done it in front of witnesses with cameras. Dr. Sinclair walked to the security desk. So, does your system confirm what I told you? Brennan's voice was tight. Yes, you're cleared. And what does my title say? Chief Diversity Officer. Dr. Sinclair leaned slightly forward, his voice quiet but cutting. So let me ask you something, Officer Brennan. He read the nameplate on the desk. When you see a white man in jeans carrying a messenger bag, do you assume he's a delivery person? Or do you assume he might be an executive, an entrepreneur, Someone who works here. Brennan didn't answer. I'm just doing my job. No, you're doing something else. You're enforcing an invisible hierarchy based on what you think people should look like. And that's exactly why I'm here. To show this company how bias operates in their systems, how it happens at every level, how security officers decide who looks like they belong and who doesn't. And congratulations, you just volunteered to be my opening case study. Dr. Sinclair took his badge back. I'm going to my meeting now, but I want your full name, your employee number, and your supervisor's contact information, because this incident will be documented, reported, and included in my presentation to the board in about 10 minutes. Brennan's face had gone pale. Sir, I was just being cautious. Cautious about what? I'm a middle-aged man in business casual carrying a bag. What exactly were you cautious about? What threat did you perceive? Or did you just see a black man and decide he didn't fit? The woman in the suit spoke up. I saw the whole thing. She'd been standing off to the side, watching. He stopped you before you even reached the door. Didn't ask for ID, just assumed you were delivery. Dr. Sinclair nodded to her. Thank you. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Absolutely. I work on 14. I see Dr. Sinclair's name in the company directory. This was completely out of line. Another voice from the growing crowd. I recorded it. The guy with his phone out. The whole conversation. Want me to send it to you? Please. Dr. Sinclair pulled out his business card. My email's on there. This is exactly the kind of documentation we need. Should profiling incidents be included in mandatory company-wide training? Let me know what you think. Brennan realized the situation was spiraling beyond his control. Sir, maybe we can discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss privately. You profiled me. You assumed I didn't belong. You questioned my right to enter a building where I work, and you did it because of how I look. That's not a private matter. That's a pattern, and I'm going to expose it. Dr. Sinclair walked past the security desk toward the elevators. The small crowd parted. Some of them followed him to the elevator bay, murmuring among themselves. One person called out, "Welcome to Horizon, Dr. Sinclair. Sorry that happened." By the time Dr. Sinclair reached the 12th floor, word had already spread. An executive assistant met him at the elevator. "Dr. Sinclair, I'm so sorry. We heard what happened downstairs. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. But your security officer just provided me with a perfect example of the bias I'm here to address. Is the board ready?" "They are, and they'll want to hear about this." Dr. Sinclair walked into the boardroom at 8:58 a.m. 12 executives seated around a mahogany table. The CEO, the CFO, the COO, department heads, board members, they'd all received his preliminary report. They knew why he was there. What they didn't know was that he now had a live example that had happened 30 minutes before. "Good morning," Dr. Sinclair began, setting his bag on the table and pulling out his laptop. "I was hired to identify and address systemic bias in this organization. I've spent 6 weeks conducting interviews, analyzing data, and reviewing policies. I was going to start this presentation with statistics, but instead, I'm going to start with what happened to me 11 minutes ago when I tried to enter this building." He opened his laptop and pulled up the video that had already been emailed to him. The recording showed everything. Brennan stopping him at the door, the delivery guy assumption, the maintenance question, the assertion that Dr. Sinclair didn't belong, the dismissal of his credentials, the profiling laid bare. The room watched in silence. The CEO's face went from curious to horrified. The CFO closed her eyes and shook her head. The COO muttered something under his breath. "This," Dr. Sinclair said when the video ended, "is what bias looks like in practice. Officer Brennan didn't ask for my credentials. He didn't verify my appointment. He made an assumption based on how I look, what I was wearing, and his preconceived notions about who belongs in executive spaces. And when I challenged him, he doubled down instead of self-correcting. This is not an isolated incident. This is a symptom of a larger culture." The CEO spoke first. "Dr. Sinclair, on behalf of Horizon Capital, I apologize. That should never have happened. Apologies don't fix systems. Policy changes do. Training does. Accountability does. Your security contractor needs to be notified. Officer Brennan needs to be removed from this building. And every security officer needs to undergo mandatory bias training with consequences for profiling. Consider it done." The CEO looked at his assistant. "Get building management on the phone. I want that officer removed today. And schedule a meeting with the security company. This is unacceptable." Dr. Sinclair continued his presentation. He showed the data he'd compiled. Hiring rates by race showed significant disparities. Promotion rates showed that Black and Latino employees took an average of 2.7 years longer to reach management positions then white employees with identical qualifications. Exit interview data showed that 73% of black employees who left cited hostile work environment or lack of opportunity. Anonymous survey results revealed that 48% of non-white employees had experienced some form of discrimination or bias in the past year. The board listened. Some took notes, others looked uncomfortable, but they couldn't deny what the data showed. By the end of the 90-minute presentation, Dr. Sinclair had secured commitments for policy changes, mandatory training, an independent review board for discrimination complaints, and funding for ongoing diversity initiatives. As he packed up his laptop, the CEO approached. Dr. Sinclair, I want you to know we take this seriously. What happened this morning reinforces why we hired you. Dr. Sinclair nodded. I appreciate that, but I need you to understand something. I had credentials, I had a badge, I had a title, and I still got profiled. Imagine what happens to candidates who come here for interviews, to vendors who visit for meetings, to anyone who doesn't fit someone's mental image of what a Horizon Capital person looks like. That's the culture we're changing. Within hours, the video had leaked beyond Horizon Capital. Someone who'd received it forwarded it to colleagues, then to friends, then to social media. By that evening, it had 40,000 views. By the next morning, 4 million. By the end of the week, 40 million people had watched Dr. Andre Sinclair calmly dismantled Officer Keith Brennan's assumptions and explained exactly why those assumptions were problematic. The headlines wrote themselves. Chief Diversity Officer profiled on first day at building entrance. Security guard assumes black executive is delivery person. Viral video shows real-time racial profiling at SF investment firm. Officer Keith Brennan was terminated within 72 hours. His contract with the security company was ended. The security company itself lost the Horizon Capital contract. A new firm was hired with explicit requirements for bias training and accountability measures. Dr. Sinclair filed a formal complaint with building management and the security company. The complaint detailed not just his incident, but a pattern. He'd interviewed other tenants, found 6 other incidents in the past year where black professionals had been stopped, questioned, or redirected by Officer Brennan. All of them had assumed it was just part of building security. None had filed formal complaints. The lawsuit came 8 weeks later, not just from Dr. Sinclair, but from 3 other plaintiffs who came forward after seeing the video. All of them professionals. All of them stopped by the same officer. All of them profiled based on appearance. The claims were straightforward: racial profiling, violation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent hiring and supervision by the security company. The security company settled within 4 months. $3 million split among the 4 plaintiffs. Dr. Sinclair received $1.2 million. He donated half of it to organizations fighting workplace discrimination. Should companies face financial penalties for contractor employees who engage in profiling? Let me know in the comments. Officer Keith Brennan issued a statement through an attorney. I made an error in judgment that day. I should have asked for credentials before making assumptions. I apologize to Dr. Sinclair and accept responsibility. Dr. Sinclair's response was public and measured. An error in judgment suggests a one-time mistake, but the evidence shows a pattern. Multiple people profiled over multiple years. That's not an error, that's a practice. And the fact that it took a viral video and a lawsuit to end it shows how normalized this behavior had become. Horizon Capital Management implemented sweeping changes. Every security officer underwent mandatory bias training. New protocols required asking for credentials before making any assumptions about access. A hotline was established for reporting profiling incidents. Dr. Sinclair's role expanded. He was given additional staff, budget, and authority. Dr. Sinclair testified before the San Francisco Board of Supervisors about discrimination in corporate environments. I didn't expect to become the face of this issue, he said. I was just trying to go to work. But what happened to me happens to thousands of people every day. The security guard who assumes you're in the wrong place. The receptionist who asks if you're there for an interview when you're there for a meeting. The colleague who asks where you really work when you say you're on the executive floor. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns that reveal who we assume belongs in positions of power and who we assume doesn't. He paused. I had a PhD, a title, a badge, and 2 decades of experience, and I still got stopped at the door. So imagine what happens to people without those credentials. People who are trying to break into industries where they don't see others who look like them. People who face these assumptions at every stage. How many of them give up? How many internalize the message that they don't belong? How many never get through the door because someone like Officer Brennan decided they looked like delivery? The video became required viewing in corporate diversity training programs across the country. Dr. Sinclair's calm dismantling of the assumptions became a template for how to respond to profiling. His insistence on documentation and accountability became a model for workplace advocacy. But his message never changed. This isn't about me having credentials. This is about a system that allowed a security officer to profile people for years without consequence. This is about bias so normalized that stopping a black man at the door felt like security protocol. This is about assumptions that operate below the level of policy but shape who gets access to opportunity. Officer Brennan's career in security is over. That's consequence. The company paid $3 million. That's accountability. But money and terminations don't change the fact that I was profiled on my way to a meeting about profiling. They don't erase the thousands of other people who face similar assumptions and don't have viral videos or settlements to validate their experiences. The real question is, what changes now? Do companies finally audit their contractors for patterns of bias? Do they finally accept that gatekeeping happens not just through policy, but through the assumptions of people at entry points? Do they finally understand that diversity initiatives mean nothing if people can't get through the door? Because if we don't fix the systems that allowed Keith Brennan to profile people for 12 years, if we don't address the bias that teaches people to see a black man in jeans and assume he doesn't belong, if we don't hold companies accountable for the behavior of everyone who represents them, then we're just waiting for the next viral video, the next lawsuit, the next person who has to prove they belong in a space where they already work. Comment below if you think security officers should face immediate termination after one documented profiling incident. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, if you think accountability matters and systemic change starts with exposure and documentation, then hit that subscribe button. Because we're going to keep sharing these stories. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for a world where a chief diversity officer can walk into his own building without being told he doesn't belong. This isn't just about one security guard or one executive. It's about all of us and the assumptions we're willing to challenge.